please give a warm welcome to the VR Director, Allison Flanagan.
Good afternoon. As Sarah said, I'm Allison Flanagan. I'm the Director of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And this is the session. Not only will you get to meet me, but you're going to learn a little bit about VR and the services that we provide. And I will give an opportunity for question and answers, so hopefully I can answer some of your questions. So let me give you a little bit of history about me. I came to Florida VR as the director in September of 2017, so getting close to 4 years in this role. I have over 29 years in the field of VR, but if you listen to my accent, the majority of that time was spent in Kentucky, where I retired in 2017, then came to Florida. So I think you could probably say that vocational rehabilitation is definitely a passion of mine. It's been a phenomenal career, and it's the best mission out there possible. So, about vocational rehabilitation. We are Florida's employment agency for people with disabilities. That is our mission, is to help people obtain employment, maintain employment, or advance in their careers. So a lot of options there, whether someone has never had a job before and they're interested in pursuing, they can come to vocational rehabilitation for assistance with that. They have a job, but they're having trouble on the job at risk of losing it. They can come to vocational rehabilitation for services. Or they have a good job, but they have an opportunity to advance in that job and need support from us in order to advance to a different position. So those are various reasons why people would come to VR for services. And I will call it VR because vocational rehabilitation is a very tongue-tying word. So we do refer to it as VR. So let me tell you a little bit about our success. 2018-19, we had over 5,000 individuals that we successfully placed into competitive integrated employment. That is our law, federal law, that we have to place individuals in competitive and integrated employment. So what does that mean exactly? It means competitive means they're being paid at the rate that anyone else, whether they're with a disability or not, would be paid for that same position. So it does address that sub-minimum wage facilities. And then also integrated. It means they are integrated with individuals who don't have a disability, and not just in a way where the people without disabilities are superiors. That's not what the law talks about. It's that equality. They're working among everybody with disabilities at all various positions. So the people that we closed successful that year, they were working an average of 28 hours a week, and their weekly earnings were $343. Now, this last year, the pandemic, it's been a rough year for everybody, hasn't it? I will say I'm glad to be here and actually seeing people face to face. This is my first travel trip for work in 15 months, so it's good to be here. But we have been open for business. I'm very proud of the VR agencies across the state. We have been open. Originally at the onset of the pandemic, we moved everything to virtual, and then in August we opened all of our offices back up. We do limit staff in the offices just because of exposure or risk, health risk. But individuals that want to meet with any of the VR folks, you can request a face-to-face meeting, you can request a virtual meeting, you can request telephone call. We try to make sure that we have all options available because we know everybody has different preferences. So we serve individuals age 14 and up. The big thing for us is you got to be able to want to go to work or keep that job. So we do have individuals that come to our agency that aren't ready for employment at that point, and usually they're not ready to start working with us at that point. But it doesn't mean they can't come back, okay? So employment, that's the focus of us. And if you need help from us, then you can start age 14 or up. You can come in and out anytime you need to. We've had individuals that have had multiple cases with us, but that's okay. They get the job, we close them successful. 5 years later, they have an opportunity to advance. They come back to us for help, okay? So we operate in 7 service areas, and we have about 95 offices across the state. So wherever you're located, there's going to be a VR office close to you, hopefully. And then we're co-located in about 12 of the career source locations across the state, which they are one of our workforce partners, as well as the career and tech ed folks and adult ed, special education. We have lots of partners that we work with. All right, so we are an eligibility program. And I say that loosely because the traditional VR services, you're going to learn in just a moment the difference between pre-employment transition services and traditional VR services. So with traditional VR services, we are an eligibility program. This is what our highly trained VR counselors do. They assess that individual. They ask, what is your limitation to employment? How's your day spent? How does that disability impact you and your ability to work? That's what the counselors are asking and are assessing. And that's how eligibility is determined. And a lot of times we get the documentation to support that. We may have to send an individual for assessments or evaluations to help us determine that eligibility. Once the eligibility is determined, if you are determined eligible, you are assigned to what's called an order of selection. And our federal law says that you must put priority on individuals with the most significant disability. I couldn't agree more, folks, because those are the individuals that need the most help. So our category 1 are those with the most significant disabilities, and then category 2 is significant disabilities, and then category 3 is basically non-significant. So in Florida, we have category 3 closed. So that means if you were assigned to category 3 in the eligibility process, you would be put on a wait list. Now, here's the good news. The pandemic's not been all bad, folks, and we have been able to release our folks that were on the wait list for the last 12 months or so because the expenditures were down during the pandemic. A lot of our customers have underlying health conditions. A lot of them opted to put their cases on hold or close them. So our expenditures went down, but that means we were able to take those people off the wait list and go ahead and serve those individuals. So that's the good news, but people always need to understand about the order selection whenever they come in and work with us, because depending on which category you're assigned to, you may be on a wait list. I will say, if you fall into category 3, you don't have the most significant disability, but you already have a job, and you're having trouble on the job. Even though you fall into category 3, we have an option in our state that we did through the feds that says, we get to go ahead and help you maintain that job even though you fell in category 3. So we call that job retention services. So that's a good thing, and it gives a little bit of extra folks that we're able to serve on category 3. And I know that's very technical and very confusing, but it is something that folks need to understand. All right, so we're going to talk about the traditional VR process, because a minute ago I told you there was the pre-employment transition services, and then there's the traditional VR services. So we're going to start with traditional. Age 14 and up, we get a referral, they make an application, we determine eligibility. By federal law, we have 60 days to do that eligibility, unless there is a reason that we don't have the information in, and the customer and the counselor agree to an extension to that 60 days. Typically, we do like a 30-day extension at the most. Then we do what's called an Individual Plan for Employment, or an IPE. Don't you all love acronyms? And don't get confused with IEP. That's the Individual Education Plan. IPE is with VR. So the Individual Plan for Employment, it actually identifies what your specific vocational goal that you want to achieve. And we get very specific. So it's not this broad customer service. It's going to get more narrow to that so that we can really focus in on what you need to get into that position. Not only does it identify what that vocational goal is, but it identifies what services you need in order to get that job. And I'm going to talk about some example services later. And I say example because the best part about our program, it is a very individualized program. Not two people walking in at the same time are going to get the same services because they both don't have the same needs. It's very dependent on what is your functional limitations to employment, what's your vocational goal, and what you need to get there. So that's what I love the most, is it's individualized. And then we start providing services once that IPE is agreed upon. And we work with a lot of providers across the state. We have over 360 employment providers that work with us. We have about 7,000 vendors that work with us. So vendors would be like your physicians, eye doctor, if you need eyeglasses, Walmart, you know, if you need clothing to go, there's one the other day I saw, whoever does steel-toe boots, somebody needed steel-toe boots for their job. Excuse me. So we have about 7,000 vendors and then the 360 employment providers that are working with us. So we certainly can't do it alone. We have a lot of providers working with us. And typically in a non-pandemic year, because we're not going to count this last year, it's messed up all of our data, as I'm sure you all know. But in a just a normal year, we usually have around 70,000 individuals that are walking through our doors every year. Only about 42,000 of those are actually engaged with us. So we do have a lot of people that come in, and once they talk to us, they realize, I'm not ready, you know, to pursue employment at this time, let's wait. And then some individuals, they move. Health often is another reason that they put their case on hold or close their case if they're having health problems. But once those services are provided, then we start into the job placement mode. And we do work with those employment providers to help us with the job placement. We have business relations staff with VR, but they are working more directly with the businesses and employers out there trying to understand what their needs are and how they can diversify their workforce by working with VR. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Then, if all goes well, we get a successful closure. But not till 90 days after they have successfully been on the job and they're happy, the employer's happy, there's no more services that are needed. That would be the only time that we would actually close the case after that point. So that's just a really quick overview of our traditional VR services. So when WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, passed in 2014, the Vocational Rehabilitation Program is Title IV of WIOA, so we had a lot of changes that came through in 2014. And one of those big changes was the pre-employment transition services. And I may call that PreEts for short, because that's another one of those long names. But the pre-employment transition services was developed for the public VR program to really focus in on the student population, the student with disabilities. And I will say that since we have implemented this part of the law, currently here in Florida, over 50% of our total caseloads are age 14 to 21. So we have a very young customer base now. It's really flipped. But this is a population that definitely can use our support and services. So in the law, it says that we are to provide these 5 core pre-employment transition services for students with disabilities age 14 to 21. They have to be in school. That's part of the definition of a student with a disability. It could be a private school, public school, home-school, as long as they're in an education setting, or it could be post-secondary. They could actually be enrolled in a secondary training program, post-secondary training program, and still meet the student with a disability definition. So with the pre-employment transition services, you know how I talked about the traditional services, we do an eligibility process? With the pre-employment transition services, it is now a potentially eligible approach. So as long as a student meets the student with the disability definition as defined in our federal law, they are considered potentially eligible, and we can go ahead and start providing any of those 5 pre-employment transition services. Now, if that student needs something beyond those 5 pre-employment transition services, they have to make application, be determined eligible, and then they start with the IPE on the traditional VR side. A little complicated. Let me repeat all that again. Pre-employment transition services, there's 5 core services. If they need anything, if a student with a disability needs something beyond those 5 core services, they have to make an application, be determined eligible, an individual plan for employment developed, and then those services can be provided with our other funding. And it really boils down to funding. Some of you folks with agencies know that. We can't spend out of both pots, so we have to make them jump through those hoops a little bit, unfortunately. Here's the 5 services. I bet you all have been waiting on that, right? So job exploration counseling, work readiness training, self-advocacy training, and peer mentoring. And then post-secondary educational counseling and work-based learning experiences. Those are the 5 pre-employment transition services that VR is providing across Florida, and we are partnering with all school districts, including the deafblind school. Do I have any questions about this part? Because usually the pre-employment transition services is what's most asked about these days. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit more detail about what each of these 5 services are. Job exploration oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and it's hard to see with these lights, so go ahead and yell at me if you need to.
So if you're in an ESE program and you go to Palm Beach State, and you're under 22, are you still entitled to services as a school-age student?
As long as they meet the definition of student with a disability, meaning they are between the ages of 14 and 21, they are enrolled in a secondary or post-secondary program, and they have a 504, an IEP, or, this is the catcher, regarded as having a disability. So if you are a mother of a daughter that has a disability, what? A mother of someone with autism. So you're a mother of someone with autism. If your child was between the age of 14 and 21, still enrolled in school, whether it's secondary or post-secondary, and they are regarded as having a disability or have a 504 IEP on file, then they meet the definition of a student with a disability, and they would be potentially eligible to receive those 5 core services. If your child would want to receive services beyond these 5 pre-ET services, they would have to apply for VR services and be determined eligible, do the IPE, and go through services that way.
Okay, so if you are getting VR is paid for your schooling.
Are you talking about college? That's the traditional VR services, not the pre-employment transition services. So if someone is attending college anywhere and they are working with VR, that means they've already been determined eligible and they already have the individual plan for employment in place. If their vocational goal, somebody give me an example, is a teacher, they have to have a college degree, right? You can't get a job as a teacher without a college degree. That would be a service that we're going to list on that IPE, is getting their bachelor's degree. And then we talk, and there's a lot of talking that goes on between the counselor and the customer about deciding who's going to provide these services, where are you going to go. There's a lot of discussion about, is this the right school for you? Do they have a disability resource center there? Your program offered there? There's a lot of discussions going on before all those decisions are made on that IPE. But we do have financial needs testing when it comes to post-secondary training, so it is dependent on your income about how much VR would contribute. If you are a Social Security disability, SSI or SSDI recipient, the financial needs testing, you are exempt from that. Okay.
So the next question is, you haven't gone to work because you've been in high school and now, thank you. I don't know about this. And now college. So will VR help you get, summer and around college classes employment to start your employment process, which is making you a better candidate for once you do exit school?
Yeah, so remember when I said a minute ago, we are an individualized program, and that's the best part about us. So, a person who's in college and it's summertime, they're not going to have classes to take maybe, and they want to get some work experience behind their belt. They need to have that conversation with their VR counselor. They need to say, hey, I need to start getting some experience, build my resume. We may refer you to one of our employment providers that we work with, because That's what they do. They're going to help her identify what would be, and we're going to try to make sure that we find that work experience that's going to link or build upon that vocational goal that she has. Does that help?
Yeah, because technically any job will help give you the soft skills.
Right.
Because there's so many different diversions to working.
Oh, yeah.
Now than there ever were than just, in a sense, doing the job. So
Yeah.
being
And
on time, dressing properly,
Yep.
staying off your phone.
And we have, you know, the pre-employment transition services like the self-advocacy, the work, all those things prepare those students for the workforce. And it's the things like showing up on time. What if you are sick? How do you tell your supervisor you can't come into work? You know, what happens if you were sick at work? What happens if someone at work was not nice to you? You know, we try to work with them on here's how you address this and teach them how to be their own self-advocate, obviously, but the right way, you know, so they can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So back to the pre-employment transition services. So job exploration counseling is one of those 5. And the services, they do career counseling, they look at labor market and see what is really happening here in Florida, maybe in their town, you know. I will tell you, and I started out as a VR technician, and then I was a counselor for a while, and that's many, many years ago. But I will give a really good example. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for sharing.
You're most welcome.
And also, we would like to have a 24 hours bus and train service. Yeah, we like to have bus every 24 hours bus and train service, including holidays, weekends, and holidays for all the Florida, including Seminole County, Orange County, Osceola counties, and so on. And we'd like to have this the bus at Country Club Road from Lake Mary's Seminole State College to Lake Mary's train station. And we'd like to have this bus at by Big Kahuna Pool. You know where that is, and that's
I have heard of it.
Oviedo
Yeah.
Boulevard, because I'll be swimming a week from tomorrow.
Well, that would be really awesome to go swimming, but
Thank
we're going to
you.
talk about employment right now, okay? Thank you. So when I was a counselor back in the day in little old Cynthiana, Kentucky, which is a very, very, very rural town, I had a high school senior who had taken welding at the technical college and or the vocational school, but he wanted to be an underwater welder. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Now, he already had exposure to welding through the vocational school, and his father was a welder. So this was really good because I knew he had the interest. I knew he knew about the career. So we really started talking about it, and I researched some things, researched the labor market thing. The next time we met, I was like, so if you pursue underwater welding, are you prepared to move to get a job? And he kind of looked at me, and he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, there's only a creek in Cynthiana. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to get underwater. And then I'm not sure there's anything to weld, even if you did get underwater. And he really did not consider this, you know. And once he realized that he would have to move, and we talked about Florida, you know, the waterways down here and the welding that is required down here underwater, or being out on a ship, those kind of things. He was like, no, 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 I can't leave my family. This is my home. I want to stay here. And that simple conversation with him opened his eyes that, okay, underwater welding sounds cool, but it's not realistic for me because I want to stay in my hometown. So we switched it to welding. And after a couple years, he got an amazing job. And as far as I know, he's still doing great and still living in Cynthiana. But that gives you an example that making sure that students and individuals understand about labor market information, understand if you choose this career path, are you going to be able to get the job in your community, or are you okay moving somewhere else? And then also helps them understand what the pay rates are. Do they have benefits? What kind of education is required to be in here? What kind of skills do I have to get in this job? So these are the kind of things that we're trying to get these students with disabilities to understand while they're in high school before they leave, so that when they leave high school, there's that smooth transition to that post-secondary world, no matter what that looks like. Work readiness training. So here's where we talk about those soft skills. And we know businesses and employers have been repeatedly telling us, we need people with good soft skills. So apparently that's dwindling these days. I'm not sure if social media and texting have anything to do with it, but I'm a mother of 3 young, well, they're not young, they're 28, 24, and 18, and I'm constantly on them about their communication, because it's terrible. But it is a little bit of a generation thing, but that's something employers are having challenges with, you know, and just what I talked about earlier, just being able to communicate with your supervisor appropriately is challenging sometimes. And then those interpersonal skills, the independent living skills. Does the individual need to understand about transportation options when they get a job? Do they drive? Do they need a vehicle? Is there a transit service where they live? All these things have to be thought through, and a lot of times that's not what you think about. You're only thinking about going to get the job. And if you got the job and you can't get there, it's not going to be a very good first day. So, self-advocacy training and peer mentoring. I can't say enough about this. Students really kind of come out of their shell when they go through self-advocacy training. It's like, and they learn how to advocate for themselves the right way. And how, you know, not to burn those bridges. Your parents ever tell you that? Don't burn bridges. You might never know when you got to cross it again. So we try to teach them about whether it's housing, employment, transportation, whatever it is. We try to teach them about how to use their words correctly and how to educate people. And it's also around disabilities, because a lot of people, unlike us, who have worked in the disability field or are part of the disability community, these folks are going to work with individuals that have not been in that. So it's important to teach them how to communicate with their peers, their coworkers, their supervisors in a way that also educates them about disabilities. And then post-secondary educational counseling, it wraps up the 5 of the core services. And this is obviously, when you leave high school, what kind of world is out there? So this is making sure they understand about their post-secondary education options. It's not just a 4-year degree, it's the technical colleges, there's short-term degrees, and that's all part of what VR makes sure that customer understands. You know, we get folks coming in, I want to go to college to be a nurse and get my bachelor's, my BSN. And it's important to make sure they understand the career ladder in that nurse field. They can go get a CNA, start working, start earning some money. And a lot of these places, they will actually support their employees to advance their education. But you get them in, they start at the bottom, because that's the good place to start, right? But then they start building on that education experience. And before you know it, they have this amazing career with all kinds of opportunities within there. So any questions on those 5 core services? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, and I just want to thank you for being here and explaining your side of what vocational rehabilitation is all about. I just want to present myself. I'm State Representative Daisy Morales. I'm a lawmaker. I make law. I help bring laws, and I'm here to show that I'm listening to what other concerns here of our people. And I just want to, you know, congratulate you for just explaining this, because this is new and we need to know about this. There's people out there that don't know exactly what vocational rehab does. And she's here to explain it to you in good, you know, good words so you can connect. And I just want to thank you for that. One thing that I want to share with you is I had a constituent that had a daughter, and she has her difficulty, but we work with vocational rehab. They managed to get her a place in the theaters where she was helping escort people to their seats. And I think that was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for her. But now the theaters are not out there. I hope they come out, but that's a wonderful opportunity. And I just want to bring that up to your attention, okay? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your support. Oh, work-based learning, that wasn't 5, this is 5. Work-based learning experiences. Were you all sitting out there going 1, 2, 3, 4, I didn't count 5. Somebody should just yelled at me. Work-based learning experiences. This is where they're gonna go out and actually experience the world of work. It's gonna look very different because in the world of pandemic, people have done a fantastic job of moving work experiences to a virtual experience. So there are the virtual options to experience work, but there still is a lot of our providers take these students out to actual businesses and employers, and they're able to observe, they're able to step in and experience that world and see if that's something that they would be interested in once they leave high school. All right, now, traditional VR services, it's confusing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it is. VR is a very complex law, and I know a lot of people are like, I have no idea what's happening, I don't understand how to do this. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to your counselor. We have ombudsmen that are there to help our customers navigate the system, or with anything they don't agree with, we have them there to help them. Because it's so individualized, and because we want to make sure that we have adequate time to really educate that customer and to work with them together about the best options, because we want them to be successful. We want them to find a job that they're going to love and it's going to be a career. That's our ultimate goal, that career. And, you know, when you think about it, someone comes up to you, what's something that you meet that they always ask? What do you do? We always ask about our jobs, right? So what do you do? People with disabilities should be able to answer that just like anybody else. They deserve the jobs, they deserve to be integrated, and they deserve to be paid at the same rate as their peers, whether they have a disability or not. So that's our focus, and these are some of the traditional VR services that you may get, but again, I'm going to throw back that it's so individualized. It really depends on your specific situation. But here is some examples. So vocational guidance and counseling, that's what we hang our hat on. That's where our counselors are trained the most on, and that's where they're looking at that labor market information. They know the post-secondary training options. They know the businesses and employers in their area. They work with the schools. So that vocational guidance and counseling, that is the crux of what we are doing. Assessment services. We do have individuals that are like, I've never had a job. I don't know what I want to do. So we might send them for a vocational evaluation. And it's a series of tests, and they come back and it says, here's your interests, here's what your aptitude is in, here's what your academics are in, and it really pinpoints some specific job areas that this individual might excel in. And that creates a really good dialogue with that individual, and we have that report to go over. And it's so amazing when you're sitting there talking to an individual who doesn't have that work experience, and they've done the evaluation, and you're going through the results, and when you start identifying the jobs that evaluation identified, they get excited, because they're like, I love that, but they weren't exposed to it, so they didn't know it was an option. So it is a pretty amazing tool. And then, of course, job development and placement, that's a big service of ours, and that's where we partner with those employment providers across the state that help us with that. Assistive Technology, that's another example of a service we may provide. Post-secondary training support, which you talked about earlier. Physical or mental restoration services, and supported employment. Folks have heard about that. We have a job coach that will help an individual. Those support employment is going to be for our customers with the most significant disability. Okay. So that is like a really, really quick overview of VR. And I've got about 25 minutes to ask specific questions. And that's our ombudsman email, or the VR transition youth if you are a high school student and have specific questions. Yes, ma'am.
Is it necessary for someone doing VR services to work full-time, or do you have a part-time options?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. She just asked if VR required our customers to work full-time, like 40 hours a week, or there are options to do part-time. And again, because we are an individualized program, it really depends on what that individual's goal and what they are capable of doing. There are some customers of ours that we have worked with due to the significance of their disability. 1 hour a week was what they were capable of doing, and they did it. And then we have people that do 40, 50, 60 hours a week, depending on what they're doing. So again, it really depends on the individual. We want to make sure that they understand, impact on their Social Security if they go to work. But we also talk to them about, if you worked full-time, this is what your income would be, this is the benefits you might get. We just want to make sure they understand everything, but we also definitely understand those limitations and the significance of some disabilities is going to limit them to less than part-time. That's a good question, though. Anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
My son just turned 14, and we are in that process now of getting those services. Can you tell me what it would look like? I mean, hypothetically.
Yeah, so it's going to kind of depend on what school district you're in, because our partnership with every school district is a little bit different. I'll try to back it up with. So the school refers the individual, or the parents do, a neighbor could, anybody could refer the student to us. We're going to collect the information to make sure they meet the definition of student with a disability. And since they're a minor, the parent has to obviously sign the information, sign the release, sign the application. Once we have all the signatures, we request the information from the school. So we're going to request the IPE or the IEP or the 504, whatever the individual's on. That helps us determine if they meet the potentially eligible requirements. Once that is all done, then they can begin those pre-employment transition services. Now the schools, we have some schools that are providing the pre-employment transition services themselves. So they've actually brought in staff to provide that curriculum. There are other schools that opted to use the outside rehab providers that we have. So it would depend on the school. We have lots of partners. Project Search is another one that happens with our high school students. The Jobs for Florida's graduate program, they're working with about, I don't know how many schools now, 12, 15 different counties, and they're providing the pre-employment transition curriculum to them as well. So it really kind of depends on which school, but when I finish this, I'm happy to meet with you one-to-one so we can get more specifics, if that would help. The good thing about our program is the customer has all the choices and all the decisions. So if you're in a school district that is providing that, they do have the internal program, obviously that would be the best option because your student is in the school and they're doing a lot of that during the school time. If you opt to work with a provider outside the agency, VR does that referral and we continue to work with that provider as they work with you. Does that help? Okay. And your VR counselor is the best one to talk to about all this because they know all that local information. Yes, question? If you're getting ready to exit high school, if you're already working with VR on the pre-employment transition services, it should be a smooth transition straight out of high school with VR support. And we're going to make sure that you have that traditional VR application eligibility done before you exit high school so that we have the services identified and that vocational goal identified to immediately start working on the employment goal. And I say it should be seamless, but you all know how this is. It should be, but we will have to improve on that sometimes because we have a lot of folks that we're working with. Yes, question in the back? So he had an IEP, but he doesn't anymore? Okay, so if you remember the definition in our federal law, it says you have to have 504, you have to have an IEP, or you have to be regarded as having a disability. And that piece is really open for interpretation. So I've told my staff, and I said, if the teacher says, I've had, Johnny in my class this year, and he definitely has some type of disability, I'd be like, okay, he's regarded as having a disability, check. I mean, it's really as simple as that. That's for the pre-employment transition services. If you want the traditional piece, you got to apply and be eligibility and be determined eligible, which is a more lengthy process. And there's a question in the back. I got a couple questions. Yeah. Whichever one. Yeah.
Hi, I have a 19-year-old son who has been working with VR for the last 4 years. In 4 years, though, he's only received one service, and it will be months and months between when I email his representative and receive a response. And I know COVID, this is not, including the last 12 months. I have asked to have a new VR person work with him, and we've been denied twice that in the last 4 years. And so I don't really know where to go from here to get him services.
You can come to me.
That would be
When this is
wonderful.
over with, come to me. We're going to get your name. Debbie is our public affairs communications person, so we're going to go back and I will talk to our ombudsman who will look into the case, make the phone call the local folks and say what's happening.
Thank you.
What y'all doing down there, sleeping on the job? Yeah, we're going to make sure that we hold our staff accountable, absolutely.
Hello, thank you for all the information that you've given us today. My question is regarding, you said it was income-based. Is the income based on just the child or the adult, or is it based on the family? Because like, for example, my son, he has the med waiver, so he qualifies for Medicaid, but that's because of the med waiver. And then the other question, I've heard that VR does modifications to vehicles. Right now, we have a modified vehicle because my son is in a wheelchair. He has cerebral palsy. And I just wanted to know, because one of the things that he's really looking forward to is driving. His body, he's able to use his arms pretty well, not his legs. His mind, his intellect was not affected, so he understands. He can, I'm sure. I tell him, maybe you work for NASA or something, I don't know. But I just wanted to know, and maybe, I'm sorry for another question, but what's out there, for children or adults in wheelchairs? What do you normally or typically see them working?
Oh, as far as the job goes, let me back up to the first part of your question. So the financial needs testing, which we have in place for post-secondary college, for college, tech college, any of those kind of expenses. And if you are on Social Security disability or SSI, you are exempt from the financial needs testing, number one. Number two, if you are still claimed as a dependent from your parents, then that is the income that we will use. When someone applies for or is going to college or technical school, we ask for the FAFSA, the financial aid, which tells us the family's income, and that's how we determine our financial participation. If someone has the maximum income to contribute, then they would have to contribute 80% of their cost for college. Not 100%, we still cover 20, but it's 80%. And I will tell you, we typically don't have a lot of people that ever have to pay very much towards their tuition, but tuition is definitely one that we do have a financial needs test on. Vehicle modifications, yes, that is something VR does work with. Again, y'all are gonna keep hearing me say this. Depends on the individual situation, right? Do they need that in order to go to school? To school, that's one thing. Do they need it to get a job? There's a lot of things that we take into consideration. We work with USF. See, I'm new. I've only been here 4 years. USF, the one in Tampa? All right. Yeah, I got it right. So USF, their rehab engineering department, we contract with the rehab engineers there, and they're the ones that are doing the assessments for the vehicle mods, the trainings. I will tell you folks, if anybody has had a vehicle mod, it takes a while. There are not enough companies out there that do vehicle modifications or have the equipment. So it's not VR that takes a long time, it's the companies that have to install all that stuff. And this is a true story. When I was a counselor, I worked with an individual who had received a vehicle mod like 10 years ago. Came back, the van's, he needs a new one, got it. He's a professor at a university. There was a very specific type of technology that worked best for him because he was a quadriplegic. And the only company that had a patent on that was located in Indiana. He waited 3.5 years before he got his van back. Brand new van, he's paying on it, and it was in Indiana for 3.5 years. The craziest thing I ever heard. But this customer knew, but he knew that their product was so good that he was willing to wait. he still had his old van to drive in the meantime, which was good. But I'm just telling you from experience, vehicle mods take a while because we just don't have enough providers out there across the country. Yes, you have a question? She's running with the mic.
I have a couple of different questions.
Sure.
What about an adult on SSD who would like to become self-employed, but they need training or certification, maybe mentorship on how to run a business, that sort of thing? Is that something that you help with?
Self-employment is absolutely a viable vocational goal. We have a more complicated process if you're going to self-employment, because self-employment is difficult. There's a lot of knowledge that someone has to have to run their own business. So we have what we call CB Tax, Certified Business Technical Assistants. I don't know, they're in the business field. They're like retired self-employment folks that have been working with us. So they will work with the customer to build their business plan. We require the business plan. That business plan has to be viable, obviously. So that CB-TAC is going to help us to make sure that that plan is viable. Or that CB-TAC will come back to us and go, this is not going to work. You know, if they don't have a good concept yet. And sometimes there's a difference between a hobby and a business. And sometimes we have to figure that out as well. But self-employment definitely is an option. We've had individuals that have gone through it, but it is a little bit different process because we want to make sure we have everything in place that you need to be successful. So do you know about taxes? Do you know about the accounting and personnel payroll? Do you know about the insurance you got to have? We don't purchase, lease buildings. We're not allowed to do anything like that. So it's where's your business going to be? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to be ironed out, but it is an option.
Okay. And the second, I have a 19-year-old who's nonverbal, autistic, and she has some pretty significant behaviors. She had an open case with VR for about 1.5 years, and she's now been closed because they said, you know, that's an employment issue because of the behavior. And so what do I do with her from here?
Come back to VR.
After?
Yeah, let's talk.
Okay.
I'm a little tougher than some of my staff are. I will tell you a true story. This was an individual that I worked with up in Kentucky, and I was a brand new counselor, folks. I met with the individual and her parents, and she was getting ready to graduate high school. She was nonverbal. She was in a wheelchair. Pretty much everything had to be done for her. She had, the only movement she had was her index finger on her right hand and her thumb on her right hand. Okay, so extremely significant disability. And when I started meeting with the parents, which by the way were the most amazing advocates for her ever, they scared me. I'll be honest with you, as a new counselor, I was like, oh my gosh. The dad was an attorney, so they knew their rights. And the mother had pretty much been taking care of her daughter for the last, 19, 20 years. And by golly, she was going to work. So when they came in, I mean, seriously, you all, I probably had the look on my face like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah, so I relied on my colleagues, help. I got a hard case. We got a difficult case. And we had a team of folks that worked with this individual. Rehab technologists actually created a device for her. And this is an example of an individual that only worked 2 hours a week. She worked at the local Walmart. And they created a recorded box on her wheelchair where her index finger could hit it every time somebody walked in the door, and it recorded, hello, welcome to Walmart. And it was amazing. It's that same town, Cynthiana, which is very small. The Walmart was probably about this size, really. And the community embraced her. They saw her every day, or not every day, 2 days a week when she was there. They loved her. The staff there loved her. You could almost see people's attitudes change right in front of you when they saw this young girl who was nonverbal, who was in a wheelchair, move her finger, and all of a sudden they heard the voice say, "Hi, welcome to Walmart," and they would all like, and she always had a big grin on her face. I really wish I knew what happened to her and if she's still working, because that was 20 years ago probably. But it was the one case in my early years that I learned the most. And I learned, don't ever immediately go in to meet with a customer and you see them and you think, there's no way. There is a way. There's always a way. And you gotta stay positive, and even when it gets hard, you gotta dig a little deeper and get creative. So, it works. Hey, question?
Hi, Allison. Good to see you
Good to
again.
see you too.
We are a provider in Miami. Well, now we've expanded, and we were part of the VR program for years and years and years, MacTown. I'm sure maybe you remember that name. We have expanded from Miami now to the Treasure Coast. We want to expand our supportive employment program and be part of VR again. So we're excited about doing that. How hard would it be for us to be part of VR, be part of supportive employment again, and partner with you all so that we can give the individuals we serve every opportunity that they deserve to work out in the community, you know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
be more independent?
We always need supported employment providers because, you know, supported employment is a very unique service, and it requires that, you know, trained job coach to get out there and do that. So supported employment providers are definitely in a need. We've had our vendor and provider application closed for a while because we got saturated in several areas. And we have to remember that our providers are there to make a living too. So if, you know, like Orlando area, if we had 100 providers here, they're not going to be making a lot of money and they're going to be closing their doors. So we do keep an eye on that. But we actually are just getting ready to do another saturation study to see where our needs are now that we're coming out of the pandemic.
We really want to focus on a lot of vocational training for the individuals that we serve.
Yeah.
We provide full service. We have 13 homes from Miami to the Treasure Coast, and an ICF that houses 56.
Right.
AET programs, 3 of them, you know, from the full gamut. Supported living,
Yeah.
supported employment goes down a little bit, but we want to focus back on that again.
Yeah.
And whatever other, we serve 18
Right.
and 8, you know what I mean? And, but we would like to work again with you all again with whatever programs are available to benefit the people that we serve. So if I can speak or leave some information with one of you on older,
I think if you go to rehabworks.org, which is our website, we have a vendor and contract services page. If you go there, it has our manual, it has everything you would need to know to become a provider or a vendor of VR. The application, the background check process, all of that stuff that is required to become a provider.
individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities on a daily basis. Of course, not each and every one of them will be able
Right.
to seek employment, but we would like to get, you know, partner again with VR.
Yeah. Yeah, and VR just entered into an agreement with APD to strengthen our efforts together with data sharing to support those with intellectual and developmental disabilities to their employment goals. So we've always been partners, but now we have it in writing with some a little bit more specific things in there. So, yeah.
Excuse me.
I can't answer that, but our the Bureau of Vendor and Contracted Services would be able to answer that for you. And it really kind of depends on which kind of application you're submitting, whether it's a vendor or a provider, and what services you're providing. But then you also have to jump through the background check requirements that's in our laws and stuff like that. So it's going to take a few months because staff do have to review what your services are and to make sure that that is a need in that area. They're going to do some analysis to make sure there's justification to bring on another provider. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Is it true that only nonprofits can be providers?
Yes. That's in the state law.
It's in the state law?
Yep.
Okay,
It's in our
thank you.
statutes.
Thank you.
Hi, my son just is aging out of high school now. He was in the VR program, and it didn't really seem like he got a lot of services with them, unfortunately. He's going to go, he's just now being paired up with a med waiver coordinator. If somewhere down the road, we're going to be doing like an adult day training for him for now, but if we decide somewhere down the road that he's able to qualify again for supported employment, what's our best route to get back into VR at that point?
Just call that office, local office, and ask for an appointment. Anybody can apply for a service. We are actually, by federal law, never allowed to deny someone an application. Okay. And you can apply as many times as you need to. So, yeah, so come back. Hopefully we'll be better. Yeah. And if not, you call me. Yeah.
We have time for one or two more.
I apologize, this information is probably available online, but when we enter into the beginning of a process for someone that's out of school age, are there deadlines, like when we first initially make contact, that they must get back to us and then before one process and then the next step and then the next step, so that we have a kind of a timeline in mind?
Yeah, so when someone contacts our office and says, hey, I'm interested in applying for VR services, our staff have a responsibility to make that scheduled appointment within 2 weeks. Then once the application is made, we have 60 days to determine eligibility. We are about 98% on our 60-day eligibility, so there is about a 2% that we don't get the information in timely enough that we have to do an extension. But I'm very proud that we're at 98%. So then the next step, the individual plan for employment, that is to be completed within 90 days. So you're already looking at kind of a 6-month process just to get to the point where services start being provided. So, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I just have a quick question. It's I have a Class D security license for the state, and I was wondering, could vocational rehabilitation help me get my Class G to be an armed security officer?
I'm going to say possibly, because I've learned a long time ago never say yes or no, definitely. That counselor, you'll need to contact VR, get assigned with a counselor, go through that stuff, but that would be a decision with a counselor. But that is a perfect example of that career advancement that we were talking about at the beginning. So more than likely, yes, but you would have to go through that eligibility process first. Okay?
Hi, I was wondering if you had a list by county of the employers that you use.
We don't, and the reason why is because that individualized approach. We get folks coming in and going, I don't know what I want to do, just give me the list of jobs y'all have open. And it's like, well, you know, we really, because CareerSource is one of our workforce partners, we utilize the CareerSource for those job postings and vacancies. We don't keep that list because we're trying to make sure those employers out there are all diversifying their workforce by hiring individuals with disabilities and not just limiting to the few that are willing to do it. Does that make sense?
So how does CareerSource interact with VR? Should you also be enrolled with them? And
you don't have to be. You can be dual enrolled. And a lot of times, depending on the individual, sometimes VR may refer individuals to CareerSource because they do have some of the employability skills training. You can do a resume development there, but they also have those job postings there. So sometimes when somebody's ready for that part, we may refer them to CareerSource and we work together. And then currently we are working with CareerSource with the Department of Economic Opportunity to start receiving, well, this is scary, y'all, but they have like 100,000 people identified in their system as having a disability, and they want to send those referrals to us. And I said, bring them. So we're working on that to make sure that those folks walking in CareerSource that identify themselves as disabilities is now being referred directly to VR so we can work together.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. That was the intent of WIOA back in 2014. We was just a little slow.
All right, we just have time for one more question. Back there.
Hello, ma'am. Thanks for the address. We are students from University of Florida, and we are assistive technology developers. So right now we have limited number of students, university students using our device for independent education. How can we get our device available to more needed people through VR?
I'm not sure I heard the whole question.
How do we get our device, the assistive technology device, for independent education?
How do you get assistive technology devices
Yes,
for
independent education.
independent education?
So complete hands-free control of computers. So anyone who has hand issues can have independent experience within classroom accessible environments.
I'm still not understanding your question. How about you and I talk as soon as we get done here?
Okay, cool.
All right, how about that? I want to make sure that I understand what you're asking. So, all right, folks, I think my time is up, but it's been a pleasure, and I hope you've learned something today here about vocational rehabilitation. But please don't hesitate. We have some annual reports that kind of does a big oversight of what VR did in 2019-20. It's got some of our successful cases in it. And our data, but Debbie brought some of those. Anybody that's welcome to take those. Please visit our website, rehabworks.org. You can contact me through that website as well if you have any specific questions. Or if you're someone I said, come see me afterwards, come see me, and I'll give you my business card. We'll talk. Thank you.